podcast. I'm here with Marty, aka TheRealMarty, who is a trader. Marty, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. Happy to have you on. So I was wondering for anyone who doesn't know you, maybe you could give us a little bit about your background and sort of a bird's eye view of your career.
Sure. Yeah, it all started like my friends were buying Bitcoin to do some not so legal things, but I saw it more as like opportunity to, make money, hold money online, transact semi-anonymously. And that grew into a full-on addiction. That went from just holding Bitcoin. I think that's where everyone starts. And then everybody's like, oh, I need to learn TA to make more money on my coins. And then I think it was 2017 happened. And that's where all the ICO craze was happening. Everyone was making a bunch of money. So then it was more, how do I keep the money? I never
Mm,
really was like a good TA guy or a good trader in terms of directional. And after 2017, I was like, I need to learn something else. I never went to like a traditional school, or I never went to worked at like a prop firm desk or anything. It was all, my own money at the beginning. And then it slowly grew into learning more and more. And then I got into options in around 2018, 2019. I guess that's when deribit started. And after learning perps and spot markets and not being a very good directional trader besides just holding, learned like, oh, you can make money no matter which direction, and really just went nose deep dive into options. And that's mostly all we do now.
that's fantastic. So you basically cut your teeth in crypto vol. A lot of my guests have experience in equity vol or commodity vol, but you basically started with crypto vol and now trade crypto vol. So that's very interesting. So maybe we could just go back when you first started buying Bitcoin. Like, what year was this when you first started getting into it? And then from there, like,
I,
how did you trade like 2017 and stuff like that? Did you uh, participate in ICOs or anything like that?
yeah, I actually bought like peer to peer my first couple Bitcoin because my friends were using it. I don't really think I had access to an exchange at that time, so I was using some wallet on my computer. I forget the name of the wallet, but it's Bitcoin QT, I guess. It was like
Hmm.
one of the first original wallets that we were using. And then I really got into, I don't know, that was like $100. So I saw the first run for me was like 100 to 1,000. So that was like the first like 10x. But I was like a kid. It wasn't like real money. It was,
Hmm.
maybe I had a couple $100 that turned into a couple thousand. And then there was nothing up until the ICO 2017 craze. And that's when I was on bitmex at the time. And I really learned futures and the perpetual contract and how those work and why they were created,
Hmm.
and how they work in the background. And then that actually made enough money. So at the end of 2017, I actually launched my own fund, but it wasn't like how you guys look at it, like a traditional fund, like a Ledger Prime or a Citadel or someone, like a market making firm. It was all just family money, super small. And then I learned grind my teeth in options, and now we take some outside money, but we're still in the $5 to $15 million range, depending on the day at this point.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then, kind of with your current fund, like, what kind of strategies are you guys running? Are you guys running like long Bitcoin covered calls or delta neutral vol trades? Like, what is sort of the core strategy?
We took the approach recently that somebody has to be the seller of these options, and I know like QCP and who else? QCP and Genesis are competing for a gold star right now in Paradigm on who sells the most through Paradigm. But there's always overpriced contracts, and it seems like a lot of people don't know how to price options accordingly because it's a 24-hour market, not a Monday to Friday,
Hmm.
kind of like a day trading options. The 24-hour market, things get misskewed, and you have a lot of mispricing, especially across various platforms. The simplest one lately was deribit and Lyra. There was a couple bucks you can make per contract. And, my size isn't like a Genesis size, right? So maybe I'm swimming in the pool where they don't want to play,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not so big, that we can't. It's like, $10,000. Oh, it's not worth it
Yeah,
for
totally.
them.
So that's really interesting. So it's interesting here that you're trading in multiple venues because one of the hard parts of multiple venues is sort of cross collateral. And then also, like when you're talking about CeFi to DeFi, that gets even more complicated. Lyra is one of my favorite DeFi option protocols. Anyone who's listened to me knows that I love that protocol. What other DeFi option protocols do you take a look at, and what other CeFi exchanges do you guys look at?
Mostly deribit for the CeFi.
Mm-hmm.
Before FTX crash, we were big on FTX US derivatives, which
Mm-hmm.
was Ledger X or is Ledger X. We were, but back then it wasn't like there was size that you could get on book. They had an institutional chat that you could do like big block trades inside their system, but kind of peer-to-peer chatting, like,
Mm.
oh, hey, do you want to buy this? Oh, no, I don't want to buy it for that price. I'll buy it for this. So that wasn't like an automated process, right? That was a full, like, kind of like old school, pick up the phone and call somebody, but it was through a chat.
Mm-hmm.
Now on deribit, we're mostly automated, and then I do a lot of manual stuff on Lyra, Premia, Zeta markets when they were up. That's on Solana,
Mm-hmm.
and Premia is on Arbitrum and Optimism and Crosschain. That's pretty much it. Nobody's built a full like a thinkorswim for options as a DEX. And
Mm-hmm.
once somebody figures that one out, I don't care about the tokenomics or anything. It's more about the platform. Once they figure out like a thinkorswim type platform for DeFi options, I think that one will really catch on. And I think some people are trying, but nobody's figured it out yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting value prop. It would be great to be able to like monitor all your DeFi risk in one place, execute in one place, check out vols and stuff like that in one place. I totally get what you're saying. So Premia is an interesting.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I know somebody. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I know somebody that's building that like a prime brokerage for DeFi, but it's not out yet. But it will be there soon, I think, and I think it will be a good product.
Yeah, totally. So Premia is an interesting DeFi options protocol as well. They're also an AMM based options protocol, just like Lyra is. Now, do you provide liquidity on any of these platforms, or are you mostly taking, opening positions, being a taker? How do you view sort of like your trading on these platforms?
With Premier right now, I don't like to provide liquidity because you have to provide as more like an LP for the total book.
Mm-hmm.
You're not selling individual. I don't know. I want to sell the 5,000 March call or something. Something super extreme. You can't pick that exact one. So providing liquidity on Premia right now isn't there yet. I think in April or May they're going to launch V3, so you're going to be able to sell individual contracts, and I think that will be a big game changer for their platform and their user base. And maybe then we'll look at selling. Right now we really just like to sell. Buying is more like a timing thing. I'd rather get paid every day. When I wake up, we got paid our theta instead of every day we're paying and maybe it cashes out, especially right now when we're just really sideways.
Yeah, right. And then
Besides today.
yeah, sure. And then what about like stuff like relative vol? Have you guys taken a look at that for your fund? Like I'm trading ETH vol versus Bitcoin vol. Any sort of strategies like that?
No, we're not playing any of those sort of strategies. What we really like to sell is like Moonboy and Doomsday options, and specifically spreads. So we're not that big to be playing in every sort of pool. We stick to what we know, and we just sell in size when we can. And sometimes, there's no liquidity. Thank God there's Paradigm to find any liquidity if we need it. But that's only on deribit, and we don't trade on Bybit, so we don't have that set up.
Yeah, Paradigm is definitely the venue to get off some size at decent prices. So when you're saying Doomsday Boy and Moon Boy options, you mean like 5 delta options, like way out of the money calls and puts that have sort of like a lot of curvature and a skew, like the top of the curve?
Yeah, the least likely to cash, right? The least likely in the money that our system says that it's not going to cash. There's a high percent, well, it may cash, but there's a high percent that it's not. And we like to stay in our range. Like I think right now for ETH, we have like a $1,500 range. If it goes above, we start to get absolutely hammered. And if it goes below, we get super hammered.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, like even today, we had a 7% move in ETH, maybe more as we're recording this right now. And the book moved like not even 1% on margin. Like our portfolio margin didn't even move like 1%.
Yeah, cool. And something you mentioned was interesting was that you do it in terms of spreads. So obviously everyone who's like a OG options trader, the people who are older than us who were there on the 1987 crash, a lot of people used to trade those tails, and then you get this sort of crazy event and things go haywire. So using spreads is sort of one of your methods to ensure a vol explosion or some sort of shock doesn't blow up your book. Is that right?
Yeah, it's managed P&L, right? So profit and loss is fixed. So I don't know, for anybody getting into options trading, just if they're trying to buy, I always say, why don't you look at spreads?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a fixed risk. That's your just say, and don't try to sell, right? For right now, don't just try to buy outright calls and outright puts. The theta's too much. The more complex 2-leg, 3-leg, 4-leg option strategies have less time decay. They're less susceptible to time decay. And for anybody trying to get into options or anybody listening, that's always what I try to push. And then when you guys buy those, we'll sell you those ones.
Love it. So you said you started trading on deribit in 2018. So we've had a lot of interesting cycles from 2018 to today. Mostly thinking of 2020, the end of the end of the bear market, start of the bull market, and then January 2021 we had a huge upside vol explosion as prices made new all-time highs. Then 2022 we had a lot of vol shocks. We had basically Three Arrows, Luna, FTX, not to mention COVID, March 2020. That was another interesting shock. How did you how did you navigate those environments, and is there some lessons that you would share with listeners or big wins from those types of events for you guys?
I think it just depends on what you guys are trading, right? Like if you run like a one option and then you try to hedge like the one option, it's more difficult than doing like a whole book for us. So when we look at like March 2020, I think I was in California and the world was ending, right? And I knew that the world was ending because we drove to my buddy's house in Palm Springs and we're bunkering down. And every day his wife or girlfriend, whatever, was watching the news like, oh, there's limit down, circuit breaker every day, like day on, day on. And it's when like there's times like that you can see, right? Maybe not like a FTX crash that you can't see. Maybe those times are a little different, but you can always position a little bit of head and maybe puts become a little more expensive on book and you're like, oh, that's strange.
Mm.
And just you can always kind of prepare for these events. Like today, the SEC is coming after Kraken. Like, be honest, like we weren't like expecting it. Like I don't think a lot of people were. It just happened, and now price is 7% down. But if you manage your whole book and you're not just pulling like a Three Arrows, like max long ETH on margin, borrowing billions, and then to buy more ETH outright, I think like even a simple hedging strategy is going to prepare you for days like today or 2020 crash. Or it's always the over leveraged people that seem to be flustered and go belly up.
Yeah, totally. Very interesting. And what about the future spreads? Is that something you guys pay attention to? I mean, we've had such like wide variation. I remember in April of 2021 we had like a 50% basis 90 days out on deribit, only to get completely smashed and partially inverted in May 2021 when we had a big pullback. Is that something that you guys pay attention to?
Yeah, the most recent one that I started picking up for myself, not for the fund, was we entered backwardation right as FTX was collapsing, and there was like one thesis, like this is it, right? Like in terms of like prices going to zero, right? Like that's the end, or this is kind of near the bottom. And I think it was March contracts at the time I bought. They were in backwardation, like way too much. I don't even remember what percentage, but I was like, this either goes to zero, or we're at least going to come back to contango, or at least flat, right, by the end of the maturity. And I don't know, it was like 16,000, something like that, 17,000. I just kept nibbling. It just seemed like price was kind of just flat. Vol was just going lower and lower. We kept getting those historical lows in vol. I guess it was November, December. And I just kept nibbling away, and that trade actually paid out, but that wasn't in like a fund size, right? That was more just a personal thing I paid attention to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then what about like the macro landscape? Is that something you pay attention to? It seems like a lot of 2022 Bitcoin and sort of macro risk assets seem to move a lot together in tandem. And even like days like today, we sort of see weakness in equities and crypto at the same time. Do you think that there's a relationship there? Is that something that you guys pay attention to?
Yeah, there's a correlation for sure. Like, when I started in Bitcoin, that's not what I paid attention to at all, right? And I don't even think I started paying attention till maybe even everyone else started paying attention. Like everyone else became a macro LARP on Twitter on like in one day. And that's when I was like, okay, like we have FOMC. I knew that. I know we have CPI. I know we have inflation. I know there's the war in Ukraine. I know there's all of these things. All of that kind of played into that futures trade kind of too. Like, oh, the euros aren't freezing. Everybody thought they were going to be no gas, no power all winter. It's already November, December. It's already cold. Now, as long as Powell, I think he's almost capitulated. I don't want to I guess that's quoted now, right? Because we're on air, but he's close. And Bitcoin now is just following like US dollar liquidity, just like everything else. Like when they're pumping markets, real estate's up, stocks are up, dog money's up, crypto's up. Everything's just, assets are up, right? Cash is down and assets are up. When there's free money to borrow at 0%, everybody's just, it's a credit cycle, right? Everyone's just borrowing money, assets go up, and now we just had a typical credit crisis, a credit crunch, and you saw big players fall out. And I hope we're at the tailwind of that. It seems that inflation's almost gonna like plateau. I don't know, it's gonna come down tomorrow or whatever, but it's almost plateaued. It's almost bad. And maybe, hopefully, Powell starts to capitulate and we can get back on the up-only train. I mean, that's maybe 2024 having talk, right? Up only from there. But today, I think it's just whiplash, sideways, up, down, left, right. It's not up and to the right. And I don't think a lot of people know how to trade that, because since 2008, we were only up and to the right.
And what about like in December of 2022, we had this decade low realized vol, only to kind of turn around and have sort of a vol is up, price is up event for January 2023. How does that type of shift affect you guys? Is that something that was good or was bad? How did you trade the low vol environment versus the resurgence in vol?
Yeah, like I think one of my buddies was like, oh, like Vols at like, I don't know, like what was it, like 30, I forgot what it was, 38 or something. Like, where's it going next? I'm like 37. You're like, it's just going down more and more. And for selling options, that was great, right? But once we got the pivot, that was like a week of just getting hammered. At least we're hedged, right? So the hedge was playing out and we had the margin to cover, but yeah, for sure was getting hammered. I think it was the run from like 1,200 to 1,500 or whatever it was. And then we were like, okay, we need to flip flop. We need to reevaluate. And then thank God we did, because I think we went to 1,700 and something. And if we didn't, it would just been more pain. The first week or two of January were pretty not good for us. and so far it's been positive. It's been profitable.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, I tend to be sort of a vol seller myself, and one of the things that's so important to being a vol seller is when you're wrong, being able to like cut your losses as quickly as possible because you sort of have this open profile to a certain extent, or the asymmetry is not in your favor typically when you're a vol seller. So, what kind of rules do you guys employ for like instance in January that you decided, okay, like I need to cut losses or reevaluate? What was, what is it, like a price threshold, a P&L threshold? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I would say it's a little different because my partner is more like the full automated side, like,
Mm.
the bot is smarter than us kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, the bot is smarter than us until it's not. And when
Mm-hmm.
it's not, then it just gets hammered and it tries to reevaluate. But I think like a human intervening, I mean, maybe if you back test it, like when we intervened, like the first or second week and reevaluated it, maybe the P&Ls would be different. But for now, since then we're up. So in my head, okay, that's good. He's more on the automated, full automated, trust the bot, and doesn't know how to cut a position manually. And then
Mm.
I just step in, put my foot down, put the hammer down, and it's time. And I don't know if I think it's a momentum thing.
Mm.
Like everyone got so euphoric from 1200 to 1400 that it was like, this can't be it,
Mm.
right? Like there's just too much buying. The world's kind of pivoting. We have these CPI numbers coming out. We have the FOMC. If those are any good, then the price is just still going to go up. And I think back, like, especially in crypto, like FTX happened, then you had Christmas, and then I don't think a lot of people were positioned for like a massive rip. I think a lot of people were positioned kind of like us, like sideways to down,
Yeah.
um, mostly sideways, not more down. Like, I don't know, 10K doomsday maybe on Bitcoin, but mostly a sideways. I think a lot of people were not positioned, and I still think a lot of people are mispositioned. I still think we can go a lot higher if I don't know, like today the SEC like threw a whole wrench in the whole works, right? Nobody could have saw that coming. Um, I still think we'd slowly go up still for a little bit longer, and then maybe towards the end of the year we could hammer it back down.
Yeah, cool. Now, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about DeFi platforms and things like that earlier. Is there anything on your radar in the DeFi space that you get pretty excited about as sort of like someone who trades these markets?
I can tell you what I'm not excited about
Yeah,
in the
let's hear it.
DeFi space. Yeah. I'm not really looking forward to like all of the hacks and all of the security risk that comes with, putting OPM, other people's money, on DeFi platforms.
Hmm.
I think that issue hasn't been found out. So if anybody is working on like DeFi security, I know there's some platforms, but it's still not perfect. And I'm not looking forward to. I saw somebody funded a DeFi credit score where it scans all of your wallets and all of your balances and outstanding loans and then gives you a credit score on your DeFi wallets.
Hmm.
I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah. There's like a lot of visibility on people's activity. I mean, we do a lot of work on Lyra Data, and we can analyze people's wallets and their trades and see what kind of positions they have open and stuff like that. So it's a new level of transparency. Do you trade Open's Power Perpetual Squeeze at all?
No, they're the ones that do the crab
Yeah.
uh, strategy too. Yeah, I threw some money in the crab strategy to watch it, and I was up a little bit. I only put maybe like $20,000 or $10,000, and that moved it so much that I was watching it
Mm.
um, for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, and the position was up, and I was like, I don't know anything about this, right? There's so much in DeFi that I don't know if you remember, like I don't know how you couldn't, but the Ohm forks, everybody's getting 60,000% APY.
Mm.
Like that doesn't interest me, and there seems like there's a lot of farming, yield farming. That doesn't interest me at all. I don't know, but I guess back to your question, like what interests me in DeFi is back to that Thinkorswim DeFi options trading platform that nobody's built yet. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm really looking forward to in a seamless um, execution. And I think the only way to be fully on chain is really hard, right? Like if you're on Ethereum, it's fully on chain, right? And you're not like DYDX,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not like 1% centralized where they run the server off chain. Then options becomes really hard, especially running a bot where it's trying to, Ethereum would be too slow. Solana could be fast enough, but if you have to pre-approve every transaction, it's really hard.
Right.
I don't know. I think with all this regulation and all of this things that are coming, it's going to be a tough road for DeFi for sure. I think people get forced to use DeFi in the future, especially in the US and some other countries that don't have access to, I don't know, simple financial assets or want to participate in crypto but can't. DeFi will take off there, but it's going to be a uphill battle with regulators.
Yeah, the regulation is definitely something that is like it's more in the cons bucket for me, especially for cool projects like Lyra. Hopefully, it doesn't mess up sort of that usability too much. Before we jump into some like kind of personal wrap up questions, do you have any opinions on sort of crypto vol going forward or crypto in general?
I think the space is here to stay. I think that options are totally underrated because people are like, why would I trade options when I can trade perps with 100x leverage and
Hmm.
click two buttons? I think that you're going to have a new cycle of like pro retail
Hmm.
traders that maybe used to work at prop funds that are out now trading their own money or, setting up their own fund. And then I think you're going to have a lot of retail learning options, not just degenerate gambling, like just outright calls on whatever Robinhood or on deribit.
Hmm.
And I think that's where I want to be. I want to be in this crypto vol space, crypto option space, more than like anything else right now. I don't want to go trade Google options and like, yeah, that's fun, and big tech options and S&P, or that's fun to trade, but for me, it's like so boring. I always say like I don't get out of bed for less than 100%,
Hmm.
right? 100% move, and we only find that in crypto, right? Like, oh, the shitcoin's up 20% in the hour. Like we don't get that. I guess now you're getting that in stocks, right? Like Facebook or whatever moves 20% in after hours, but traditionally that wasn't the case, right? It was just always up and to the right, and crypto's the last free market, and I think the free market will continue to build, and I think that the option space is super underrated, and I think hopefully in the future we'll get a lot of more users and a lot of more recognition.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. So, for anyone who's new to options, is there any books or resources that you would recommend that helped you along the way as you got into options?
Yeah, I have on my Twitter, my pinned tweet. I guess we can put my Twitter on the notes or something.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have a books list. So the list starts like with nothing to do with options. It's more about like financial markets. It just mostly has to do with overall trading
Hmm.
and not technical analysis, right? Just overall markets. There's a interviews book. There's a story wrote in the 30s, the reminiscence of a stock operator. That one's the first one on the list. I think anybody that wants to get into any sort of markets should read that one. It's a story wrote in the 30s, and everything in that book is still relevant today to, people, how they act, how the markets react, why they react.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think that's
cool.
a good starting place for anybody that wants to get into markets in general. I think you can go off the deep end with mathematical books in terms of options.
Hmm.
You could sit there for hours and years, like the Taleb books. You could read those and for years and years, and maybe you still don't understand it, right?
Mm.
I think it's easier to start easy and then work your way up. And if you want to go to these college level, grad course level books, trust me, they're always there.
Hmm. Cool. And then outside of trading and running the fund, what do you like to do for fun?
Oh, I like to travel. I've been, I live down in South America, but I've been in Buenos Aires for the last month, meeting a bunch of crypto annins and hanging out with a bunch of cool people down here. I really like to travel. I like to play video games. I like to read books. I like to go to the beach. That's life in South America, beach life.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Marty, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Love to hear from you and hear your perspectives on the markets. To anyone who tuned in, thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.